Okay, so people, I feel like people in general want to change and always feel like they're not changing. And that is what I wanted to talk about today is just some things that I've done in my life that have resulted in personal change and hopefully give some tips about, what we can do, like action steps we can take in order to institute change in our lives. So I had a few notes here. I was just going to go through them, and then if you had thoughts, just bring it out. And then also to anybody viewing, open to feedback. We're just trying to create good content that adds value. So if you see something you like, let us know. Something you don't like, let us know as well. So I have three main items I wanted to bring up about change, and two of them you might kind of roll your eyes because you've probably heard them. So I'm going to start with the one that I think is a little different. So a couple years back, I read a book called Yes Man, and you might have heard there's a movie by the same title with Jim Carrey, and it is basically the story about this guy who decides for like a couple months he's just going to say yes to everything, like every invite, you name it. And he goes really far. Like he responds to like spam email. Anybody asks him to, like, he ends up going to like the Netherlands and like trying some recreational drugs or something because some guy offered it to him, and he would see he saw like a sign at one point that said like travel to Singapore, and he's just like, I guess I'm going to Singapore then. And the interesting thing is he started off in like a funk, and he just really wasn't knowing where he was going in life, and someone suggested saying yes more. And so I was kind of inspired by this book, and I decided for a month, a couple years back, maybe a few years now, I'm just going to say yes to everything for like a month. And it was interesting. Yes, you do end up doing a number of things, that were like, well, that didn't work out. But at the same time, it challenges assumptions. I know, like with a lot of us, we say like, oh, this isn't going to work. I'm not going to like this or whatever, even though we've never tried it. Mm-hmm. And so the biggest takeaway I think I have was actually I had some friends who were trying to encourage me to play a sport called Ultimate, which is basically soccer with a frisbee, if you haven't heard of it. And we have a league here in Toledo, and I have never done anything sports-wise in my life. Like my parents tried to get me to do t-ball like in first grade, and I just like hated it and didn't do anything with it. Really? And so like I did no sports my entire life. So the idea, I was just felt like a computer nerd, and I'm not athletic or anything like that. But they asked me to come out, and so I was like, yes, I'll come out. And I ended up really enjoying it. Found a sport I liked. I've played in the league 3 years now. Which has been, a fun thing almost every summer. And so it was just been a really interesting addition to my life that I never would have perceived. So that's kind of a challenge I have is, read the book. It's by Danny Wallace. And then also consider, saying yes to everything for a few weeks or a month or anything like that.
I will say the computer nerd thing has worked out very well for Matt, from what I can tell so far. They say nerds rule the world, right?
Well, for now.
And you do run marathons now. So did that come out of you starting to, like, with the Ultimate first?
I was kind of, like, running already, but not very regimented and such. So it probably, I like to think it all ties together somehow.
Okay. I remember being completely shocked the first time I played Ultimate. Mm-hmm. I pictured it as just mostly Frisbee. And I collapsed about 30 seconds into. I didn't realize you run like 17 miles every game. So.
Yeah, it's something else. So yeah, definitely that's one way to institute change in your life. There's a great quote in the book, in one of the 99U books. I think it's the Maximize Your Potential. It says, "Change will lead to insight far more often than insight will lead to change."
I'm glad you said that quote. Mm-hmm. I was fishing for that in my mind as you were talking.
Yes. Yeah. And so ultimately, if we want to institute change in our lives, it's kind of like a chicken and egg problem. We have to actually do change in order for change to come to us.
Can you repeat that again slowly? I'm trying to wrap my brain around it. So
it's kind of a chicken and an egg problem because...
Well, the quote itself, I mean.
Oh, okay, right? Yeah. So change will lead to insight far more often than insight will lead to change.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but it sounds like an oxymoron or like a chicken and egg problem because it's like, how do you, if you're looking for change to happen, but you can't get it to happen, but you need the change in order for it to happen, what do you do?
Well, to me, right. Mm-hmm. I think one of the core ideas in that quote is that I view, say you gain some new insight and you try to institute change, you're initiating or trying to initiate the change. Whereas the reverse, the change leading to insight, I would say personally that the greatest moments of insight that I've had have come through circumstantial change or things that I didn't initiate, things that happened in life that I didn't want to happen, that took me somewhere I wasn't wanting to go, didn't know I was going, and had this awareness.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's maybe the crux of that, is the fact that we're not initiating change as much as, well, I guess that raises the question of locus of control, right?
Sure.
What are we controlling? What is happening to us, and how do we perceive it?
Right. And so,
Anyway.
no, awesome. I think you bring that up because some people are probably thinking that right now. They're like, change has to happen to me. And so what I'm thinking is, how do we at least increase our surface area for change to occur to us? And I think part of it could be through saying yes to a lot of things. And then this is going to lead into a couple other points I wanted to make as well, which is the second point is reading. I think that a lot of change, for myself personally, like I always like dreamt of reading more, but I never did it up until like a few years ago. For most of my life, I just never read. And then I decided to join a book club, which in a way, again, was saying yes to something. I don't know if it was necessarily during that time frame, but I did it, even though I didn't consider myself a reader. And we read the book Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. And it just blew my mind because it completely changed the way I looked at things like vulnerability and shame. And because of that change, it hooked me into wanting to read more, because I just never knew of the ability of a book to change my behavior. And so that's kind of what got me hooked on reading and whatnot.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I saw a quote on the back of a T-shirt at a gas station a couple summers ago, and it said, "We read to know that we're not alone." And it made me realize that you have this vast wealth of writers and authors from human history who have lived stories that a lot of times we're repeating with different characters, different settings, but we identify with the core things that they say. And so how I think that ties into the idea of change is, when you read something, you are open to a new opportunity. You get to experience it in a different way, like a third person observational way. But it can introduce you to ideas and things that you may not have exposed yourself to. And just becoming aware of that, I think, helps us change. Just that information, and then of course application later as we do go through our own lives. I think that knowledge can maybe even better prepare us for opportunities that happen or experiences that happen.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for bringing that up. That goes with and just for purpose of like proving the point. Like a lot of like very successful people are like voracious readers. So like Bill Gates, speed reader. Warren Buffett supposedly reads something like 500 pages a day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, granted, not all of it's books.
Like current events, news stuff?
Yeah, stuff that's like relevant to his investments and whatnot. Some of it might be books. Elon Musk, I guess, kind of goes in phases. He, back when they were running PayPal, like I remember reading that Cryptonomicon, which is a novel by Neil Stephenson, was considered like required reading while they were working on PayPal, because it's like, this future setting sort of like sci-fi fantasy book. I haven't read it personally, but it's just interesting that they had time to read fiction while building PayPal. And supposedly Elon Musk taught himself how to build rockets just by reading. He just got the books on like how to build rockets, and he read on them.
One thing I have in common with Elon Musk is I read sporadically too.
Yeah.
One book every 10 years or so.
Okay. Yeah. Nice.
I haven't built any rockets lately, but.
Okay. Well, maybe that'll be next for you.
Yeah.
So, and then with that, like, I think that what keeps encouraging me to do the reading, because I think what people struggle with is like, I should be reading. And then they try to push themselves to read, and then they fall off, and then they give up and they don't do it. And so my recommendation for that is just look for that outcome. Like, try to read a book, like something like by a look for what's trending right now with the top sellers. Read it. Try audio if you have to. Audio is great. I've done a ton of reading with audio, and if you see change from that, associate that outcome with the reading. So don't read just because you're supposed to do it or something like that, but do it because you want that positive output to happen, that positive outcome.
So do you have any books that specifically come to mind that have affected you? I mean, Yes Man, you had said, right?
Yeah, Yes Man, Daring Greatly has had a huge effect on me. Probably one of the most profound effects. There's some other ones as well. One I've mentioned to you a lot. It's not as famous of a book. The Answer to How is Yes by Peter Block.
Oh, yeah.
Very underrated book. It's an amazing book. There's probably a number I'm not thinking about right now. I kind of wish I had a list, but we can make a separate video like on books that have changed us or something. Why not?
I've had a lot of book titles change me. I just
Hey.
feel like, oh, I get the gist of that book.
Yeah.
It probably has nothing to do with what's inside of it, but there have been several that I thought were really neat
Awesome.
and got me thinking. So
Yeah, but we should do let's do a separate talk on that. Why not?
okay,
And then so for the third item I wanted to mention, journaling. Now again, this is another thing, you can't do it just because you're supposed to or you should. There's a certain method to it. I got into it because I had a career coach get me into it. He had me sort of like if I had anxieties or fears with a certain decision, he would have me journal those items. And then right at the very end, we'll see. And then you go and do the task or whatever, and you find out, like, did any of these fears actually happen?
right.
And so journaling is more than just like, Dear Diary, here's what happened today. It is about like articulating your thoughts and just like concerns or feelings. It's about contemplation, like where are these thoughts coming from? Where are these assumptions coming from? What is an assumption in my mind that's not even true? Somewhat famous author Ryan Holiday, he talks in a podcast with Tim Ferriss. He says he journals every morning. He writes down like what he's working on, and he says like if you don't know what you're working on, so in other words, change, like what it is that you're trying to change. Maybe it's a habit, maybe it is a viewpoint or a work ethic or something. Like if you don't know what you're working on every day, how do you ever make progress? I can't remember exactly how he words it, but it really stuck out to me. So now I've been journaling more. What am I working on? And just articulating it, putting it on paper, having to formulate it in my mind and then putting it on paper can have an effect on like just, behavior and stuff. So I don't know if you've journaled at all or not, but it's something like I keep doing, again, not because I'm supposed to, but because of the outcome that I get from it.
Yeah, no, I haven't ever journaled in the sense I think that you're talking about. I've taken notes before or jotted things down. I've read about journaling. I've heard that some people consider it therapeutic. Maybe just being able to articulate maybe the complexity of what's going on in your mind. But
Okay.
I've known a lot of people who've done it, who wrote every day or would write down what happened that day, and it had some benefit for them. So I've the idea's come up several times. I've never done it. I don't find it appealing, but that could just be because of the certain ideas I have about it. But I don't know. Maybe the time will come where I'll try
Maybe you should write down those ideas.
Write down
You should
the-
journal them. Awesome.
So, yeah.
Cool, man. Well, those are the main 3 points I wanted to list. Try saying yes more, even if it's not to everything, but that could be a good commitment. And try saying yes more. Try out reading. Try out journaling. Just pick one of them.
Yeah.
And do it because of the outcome, not because you're not good enough if you don't do them or something.
Good ideas. Yeah, definitely the reading. You've actually inspired me to read more the past few years that I've known you.
Cool.
You've said a couple
Appreciate
of good
that.
books. Yeah. So, cool.
All right, man. Well, let's wrap this up here. Again, love to hear feedback. Would love to know if there's anything adding value here for you. Please, reach out in the comments, Facebook, email us, whatever. We appreciate it. We're just, trying to see what can help people based on our experiences. So,
All right. Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
Cheers.
Cheers. That's done. I'll stop this.